We live? Yes, excellent, wonderful. Welcome one, welcome all to another stream here on Fancast AFL where we have a proper footy chat. It's your boy Joe, joined here by my good friend Swiz. How's it going, man?
Appreciate that, good friend. Yes, Joe. I'm glad. I am glad to be here. After us spending grand final day together, we've checked that out, but we've had there'll be a video coming up about our thoughts there. But that was a great day. Funny story we had from there. We've got the footy there that we're kicking on the day. It looks a bit worn. Joe, with his great skills, put the ball up in the tree.
You don't have to expose me here.
I know, but I'm expose my mate and that because a good mate Rowe decided to jump up on the tree and get that ball down for us. And
he's a
hero, and then nearly killed himself falling out of that tree.
Was this far from hitting the gutter.
So that was probably the highlight from grand final day. I've got my new Her Way shirt on. Little Abby, 13-year-old, who is doing everything to promote women's sport at the moment. Our dream is to get her on here and talk all what's happening, especially for us for women's footy and cricket, because that's probably our biggest focus. But I know she was on the project and everything, so I'm glad that I thought let's get some merch and support the wonderful things she is doing there.
Absolutely.
But mate, footy this week, it's my favourite time of the year.
Oh yes,
trade period. Have you been following it? Any thoughts, mate? Because we'll go into this a bit more detail. As you put the poll at Sunny's on, you're looking very
I'm going to
good
put
there.
these on because this is where we shine. This is where the Bombers are at their best. So I got to look at my best.
You have been draft time champions for the last 20 years.
Oh, yes.
And I said it in our in the pod that's going to get released about this is where clubs do their best work, where it actually relates to how they'll go on field. Now, injuries and other stuff happen. But we saw Collingwood, Brisbane last year with what they did, and then naturally their improvement and go. Everyone but Essendon, who just seem to be the complete opposite, because every trade period they seem to win it. The Bombers supporters are up and about, and then it accounts for nothing as it comes through. So we may as well start with the big news.
Yes.
And now it's been squashed on its head, but this trade period looked like it was going to be quite
explosive.
Well, no, actually, the complete opposite. I was going to say the complete opposite compared to last year, where we had some massive names, and you usually see this. One year it goes off, the next year, it's a bit more subdued. More your bit part players move, and then they sort of build up for the following year. But then we had that completely turned on the head with the whole Clayton Oliver news.
Oh boy!
So for anybody who's been sleeping under a rock and hasn't heard, Clayton Oliver's been having some issues with his professionalism. There's videos out about how he's been treating staff. It's it nearly rocked the complete trade period. But he sat down with Goodwin. Melbourne had a emergency board meeting last night, and now Gary Pert's come out and said, no, we actually don't have him on the trade table. He's a contract player. We believe he doesn't go anywhere, and he should be a Melbourne player for the next 6-7 years of his contract. Now, that's not going to stop, and this shouldn't stop. The teams that have been really pushed towards, being linked to him as Adelaide, Essendon, there's a couple others, still going, what trade could we come up? The problem is, with Melbourne trying to, I think, backtrack there, because this was spiralling out of control for them.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's more them trying to make sure, even if he was to somehow come out, which I don't think he is, and I've said it, I've been pretty out there with Twitter saying, no, I can't see it happening.
Neither.
But I think it's also now like putting it in the other club's court, like, there might, if there's that slight chance, what are you going to offer? And now for the Crows supporters who are like, maybe a first round and a future first round, I've been getting into them all week because it's not enough. Melbourne are wanting Harley Reid, if that's what's going to happen, and a key forward. Now, a lot of other people are like, that's massive overs, and that's fine. But if you're not offering that, you're not getting Clayton Oliver.
It's not overs, though. This is Clayton fishing Oliver.
And this is the whole thing, isn't it, mate? Because Clary has been, if this is his form while he's been unprofessional.
Yep.
How good could he potentially be if he got his shit together?
Oh, yeah.
Because this guy has 30 touches, 10 clearances, and 8 tackles for fun each week.
Yep.
And this is where somebody and I've heard different rumours. We've all heard the different rumours. I've had a couple. There's probably one thing that I know that's been confirmed, but I'm not going to say it here because you hear it, the unprofessionalism, you hear the gambling, potentially the drug stories, the tattoo story, all that sort of stuff. So there's some truth to one of those things, but It's not us to, go into those sort of details and character defame him.
Yeah, correct.
But we
It's
do
his
know.
personal
But the
life.
thing is, we do know there's some unprofessionalism in how he goes about it, which with a lot of players. Clubs are made up with a whole lot of different people. Some players get a bit more leeway than others, and we've seen this in the past. DeGoey, Stevie J, some awesome players out there.
Ben Cousins,
exactly. Where they're giving more latitude than other players who might be, your fringe. And rightly so. Yes. But then there's a certain point where clubs go, no, that's too much. And I think this is Melbourne coming out and saying, we now need you to put your head in. We've gone public with this. So now the focus is on you.
Because it's borderline too much.
It is.
You know what I mean? And everyone is hearing about it. Everyone and their mum and their dog and their pet fish in that fish bowl are starting to hear about, oh my God, could there be a movement here? Once a crack forms, especially as high profile as this is, it's very hard to mend it. And when you have, and if even if half of it is what's been reported is true, it's very hard for someone to just completely turn their life around and fix all those problems. You've got people who have repeatedly tried to fix themselves, but they end up falling into bad habits again. And you got someone like Brendan Favola, for example, who was an absolute superstar, and yet he moved clubs. They knew what sort of baggage was coming along with him. But this guy is worth it because he can win a game off his own boot. And there is no doubt about it. If Melbourne were to lose Clayton Oliver, they are not winning. They have to demand massive, whatever compensation as a result, a fair trade deal. He's got 7 years on a contract, $7 million. He's in the best handful of players in the entire competition. If they lose him, even if they get Harley Reid in, he's not going to make the immediate impact that a Clayton Oliver has.
I think they've got the kind of the mids that could cover it with Track, Viney, Brayshaw, Pickett can go through there. They've got enough talent. And I think this is not really this is kind of a win-win situation for Melbourne. I know they're getting heavily criticised, but putting out there in the public says, Clary, get your shit together. It actually also makes a statement to the other players going, okay, we know we've given him too much latitude. We're bringing him in. This is the club putting it out there saying, enough's enough. But if another club goes, well, actually, no, we think we can turn it around. We think this guy can be by far the best player in the comp if he does get his stuff together. And we're willing to go out and trade for what Melbourne want. And Melbourne are only accepting pick one. Like, whatever the deal is, it's got to able to lead to them on trading the West Coast or part of a three-way trade so they get Harley Reid in. And then it's either with that club, and I think they're happy to give up their pick. I think it's pick 6 they got from Jackson last year.
I think it's pick
5, but it gets put out for 6 with the Mackay deal. And if that meant a key forward coming in. Now, there's a lot of links that we can talk about with their key forwards, but depending on who it is. But I think Melbourne are happy to give that because the reason they lost finals, as much as you take Oliver out, who's a superstar, they feel like if you put Harley Reid and then put some of these other midfielders in there full time, they can probably cover it to a certain extent. But that key forward is going to be the massive change for them. But if they can get Clary in the right headspace and they can still also bring some sort of key forward in, they're going to just be better for it as well. So,
but as soon as you start to sacrifice from the midfield in order to gain a forward, well, it's the mids that give the ball to the forwards.
True, but they've got some pretty good mids in that
They
team.
have, but they're not Clayton Oliver.
Yeah, but Petrarch is playing forward sometimes just because they've got so many good mids. Like, look what happened this year with Viney. Because Oliver goes out. Viney starts playing. What did he finish in the Brownlow? Like Brayshaw 2 or 3 years ago finished 3rd in the Brownlow. So they've actually got some really gun mids who don't get that full time. And even they're pushing out James Harms because there's not enough room. They could potentially just keep him because he's on over $500,000 a year and it's probably putting a few other clubs off just because of how back-ended his salary is.
But he's not even that great.
But he's not. But he still could play a part in that.
They've lost
midfield.
James Jordan as well.
Yeah,
he could have been a good player there. He's going to go over now to the Swans. He's already gone to the Swans.
He has gone to the Swans.
Congrats
for
to him.
End of second round compensation.
Yeah, so that's a win, I think, for the Swans.
I think that's a win for the D's. I was surprised that
I like James Jordan.
Get it. I think he'll play a role for the Swans next year, but I don't think he's the be all end all.
No, he won't be.
But he'll play a role just because Mill's injury and. And then the Swans. Well, Swans are one team being very active for that, and we'll get to them in a sec. But to finish off of this Melbourne talk, So they've been linked to a couple of forwards. There's some talk that they were trying to look at getting Tom Lynch out of Richmond. Tom Hawkins has even been linked. Like, Hawkins doesn't actually have a deal with Geelong yet. I know Emily, Supercoach Mama, so a lot of people know of her after winning Supercoach a couple of years ago. She's been putting in our chat quite concerned about why hasn't Hawkins resigned, what's going on there. Now, I'm not saying Tommy Hawkins is going to leave Geelong, but you'd be tempted if Geelong were to go out and say, okay, now we are more in that rebuild right now, and I'm only going to play for one more year. Does Melbourne go, well, here, we'll offer you this. Come and try and help us win a flag? And maybe that's the appeal to try to get Tom Lynch out of Richmond. Like, he's on massive money.
He is.
But is there a way that they could sort of do it, satisfy the Tigers and go, well, you could be the missing piece? Because the Ds we saw, they kicked themselves out of the game against Pies and then once again against Carlton. So you can make an argument that Melbourne could have been and should have been the premiers this year if they'd kicked straight in that game. They get a home final, against would have been against the Giants, into the grand final, home final against the Lions at the G, and you never know. So
not guaranteed. They lost that last year.
There's no guarantee. But if they've got that key forward, does that mean, and I think they're happy to offload some of these picks. They don't want sort of the young fellas coming in.
Yeah, there's no need for that.
Yeah, they've got young Jefferson developing anyway. They've already got JVR. It's just who is the key forward for the now while they've got this list, like May, Lever, they're all getting older. So I think that's definitely on Melbourne's thoughts.
Guess Sam Wiedemann. I reckon he's available. He can play a roll up forward for some structure.
Oh, no.
Get him off our hands.
What a pickup.
What a pick. Oh, that's top notch there.
So far we've had two moves. So we'll talk about the Swans next. So James Jordan was the first to go in the free agent, and as we said, the compensation's end of second round.
Yep.
Now, the other news came out today. It was about them and Taylor Adams and the link. So apparently,
very interesting.
Very good mates with Brodie Grundy. Naturally, they played together for a long time. And then Taylor Adams, for those who forgot, actually started his career at the GWS, was part of that trade with Heath Shaw. He's obviously lived in Sydney, would have connections up there, and the Swans were apparently sort of doing some groundwork on this as last year. Because these things don't happen overnight.
No, they don't.
They do take time, and you get the odd one that comes out of nowhere. But a lot of these clubs do put a lot of work and start sniffing around players who potentially could fill a role. So, especially with Mills out, the Swans are trying to beef up their midfield. They know they got beaten up around that area, especially last year in the grand final to the Cats, and then at moments this year. So even at Taylor Adams' age, who I think will be 31 next year, they could still see a role for him for a couple of seasons in there. James Jordan, develops and also comes in and helps support that. There was some talk about James Harms, but I think that won't be the case if Adams is the one that comes in. So, and then Brodie Grundy, we know, is going to go to Sydney.
And Joel Hamling from
Fremantle's done his medical as well to try to help because, Paddy McCartan, unfortunately, with all those concussions, has had to retire. So they're looking to beef up that part of the ground. They apparently offered Aaron Norton 10 years, $1.2 million a year or something ridiculous. Forced the doggy's hand for the 8-year.
He wasn't even coming out of contract. That's the crazy thing as well. Yeah,
and he's not even he would have not even been a free agent.
No. This is a massive play, a massive win by the Swans. Forcing the Dogs to do that.
So the Swans are after another key. They're after a key forward, but they're looking at their list, going, our time is now.
Yes.
Heaney's not getting any younger. They've got some great. We saw the form of Goulden, so he's come along. They've got
Chad
Warner. So this bunch, and you could argue the Swans. These guys will be good for the next 6, 7, 8 years, but they're feeling like this is the time. Let's try to go out, get some of these players in now, and let's have a real fair dinkum crack at this.
Why not get better faster?
Oh, of course.
Why not? There's no harm whatsoever in paying up for these free agents. They're not losing anything, and they're allowing themselves to feature in finals, feature in September, give these young players, they're still relatively young players, the taste of September, the taste of the high-pressure games, and it will only serve them well in the long run. And they are adding real good, genuine, talented players. I mean, Grundy, one of the best ruckmen in the comp before his injury, of course, and before his sort of treatment at Melbourne. Taylor Adams is still in Collingwood's best 22. He'd 100% be on the ground in that grand final, in that premiership team, if not for his injury. So he's a best 22 player in a premiership side. So that's already a massive win there as well. James Jordan was getting semi-regular game time as well with Melbourne, who, as we discussed, should have probably been in that grand final, probably could have won the whole thing as well. So for him, at his age, to have been such a regular contributor, he's a premiership
even though
player.
He didn't get to run on the ground. I've shared my thoughts about that before.
That was amazing.
How you not get one of the guys off, even though it was an injury sub at the time. It just made no sense. But so yeah, they are making some really big moves, and you can see, and this is what happens. Like if your club's not doing anything at this time of the year, like my club, the Tigers, you do get left behind. Now, but then sometimes it might be a case where some teams are thinking, well, we might not be able to contend, or I don't think it's about being happy with your list, but you might go, okay, we might go 2 steps back to go 3 steps forward. And we've seen that with Hawthorn last year, who actually ended up winning the same amount of games, even though they moved a lot of players. But now they're trying to go the opposite, not having the success that way, so they'll just go back to the draft if they've got Chol's commitment, but they've missed out on a few others.
And they've got Massimo coming across as well.
Oh, Massimo could play a role there of so it is a case where these sort of bit players, clubs especially near the top, are trying to think, okay, who can we get in who might able to play a role, like so for Collingwood, and it was so much noise made about who they brought in last year. So Tom Mitchell's a Brownlow medalist, a gun, and helped with their clearances, and I think it was probably underrated how good he was. McStay's played his role throughout the year, didn't obviously be there on grand final day. You got Bobby Hill, who won the Norm Smith, which that cost him like a future second rounder. And even throughout the year, I think he kicked about 35 goals off the top of my head.
He's been a steal.
So fantastic there, great. Frampton, we've had a bit of jokes about.
Frampton.
But he's still now a premiership player, still played a role for them.
How is he a premiership player? And you've got these modern day greats
who don't even get a chance to win a final, let alone.
Yeah, I know. Let alone Billy Frampton moving across from Adelaide. That's just pure luck, that is.
And then Collingwood, because actually the one thing, and it probably hasn't even been talked about enough, is the fact that they paid some great players to play against them this year. Like Grundy and Treloar are getting paid by the Pies. And on that, so that this is confirmed. So Grundy goes to Sydney, Collingwood will still be paying part of his contract.
Wow.
Of that. So the deal is with Grundy, it's not with Melbourne. So I know a lot of Pies supporters going, well, he moves, we don't have to pay that. That is not the case at all.
Jeez, look, only Collingwood. Seriously, how many other clubs in this competition can self-handicap themselves like this and still win a flag?
It's an amazing effort. But that is that whole Moneyball that gets brought up, and it's one of the greatest movies of all time.
I love Moneyball.
Especially a sports movie. And you've got a case where, they've gone with the Moneyball ruck set up with Cox and Cameron, which ended up paying off for them instead of having all their money in Grundy, even though if you probably put that all together with the fact that they're still paying money to Grundy, it probably all works out to be sort of the same situation. But some of these other players have come in and they play their role, and it doesn't cost them as much money compared to some of the other list builds out there. And we've talked about Carlton to depth, where they've got a very lopsided. GWS is the same, where a lot of A-grade players, B-grade players are getting paid a lot of money, and then relying on those other guys to sort of step up because they take up a lot more salary cap. Where Collingwood, for example, it's like Myercheck wouldn't be on that much compared to some of the other key forwards. Still kicked his 40+ goals this year. They've got a lot of players that can step up and play different roles. Which it's credit to it and credit to the coach. The Lions, similar, they do have their star factors. We know about their midfield, and they did the exact same. They brought in Dunkley. He did exactly what they needed to do to help them take that next step. Danaher, they identified him the year before. Again, it's helped them.
Connor McKenna,
there is a Moneyball situation there. And him and Kitty Coleman have replaced Daniel Rich, now that he's retired. And credit to Daniel Rich still winning their longest kick on the grand final day. So still got something there in the tank.
Fev gave him a fair shake as well.
Sure did.
And he's not looking after himself at all.
I won't back Fev. I love Fevy.
I love Fev, absolutely.
But so they've brought in additions. So they've got Dode's commitment there to Helmet, and even though he's going to miss majority of next year, they're hoping to get him right as they, if they are in contention for September, which will help them now that Marcus Adams is retired, and so they've got some. Now they are making moves again to make sure that, if not just staying up there, but hopefully trying to close the gap on Collingwood. And it was a small gap, and we're talking 4 points. So, but there's other teams that are trying to improve they're going to come for them, and that's what happens this time of the year.
Yeah, so But see, with your team, the Tigers, I know you're saying that you guys aren't being very active. Is that due to the fact that you guys have traded away so many draft picks in order to get your Hoppers and your Tarantos across the line? Which, at the time, you obviously would have thought, hey, this is absolutely worth it. These guys bolster up our midfield. And I think you were widely tipped to be like a top 8 team at the start of the season. Obviously, you guys were completely crucified with injury, especially early. And having no Tom Lynch is just absolutely... I don't know who can survive something like that, with such a massive reliance on him. Do you see yourselves maybe trading some players out in order to get into the draft, or what do you reckon?
I think it's nearly it's going to be a bit of a hold because the new coaches come in, and we even saw this last year with the Bombers' new coach. It takes them time. They want to check over the list, see who's going to fit into their game style. So there's not usually a lot of drastic changes in that first season.
Yeah.
And we do know it's not the coaches some of them don't have a huge say. Like, you've got recruiting managements and the list managers, and they've already got things in line. But at the same time, when you do have a change, and the difference is Richmond knew they were changing from the middle of the year. Sometimes when the seconds come, it's a bit more frantic there, and or the list managers have already got the idea. Where I think Richmond, they Dimmer's left after the Essendon game, so you're talking about 12 rounds where they've already obviously had the meetings and gone, maybe we don't make any drastic changes until the coach comes in, and then we talk through, because depending on what coach you have, you don't know what sort of game style is going to suit the players that you're kind of after. They know they needed a forward, so that's why they're chasing Cozzy from Hawthorn. But outside of that, I think they might just back in the list, see what happens under Uze for first year, and then reassess. If it goes pear-shaped, then they're going to get a high pick, and then maybe some of these other players get moved on and it goes into a rebuild mode. If under Uze there is that sugar hit, and a bit like McRae, and they see Richmond come straight up the top of the ladder or up around there, it might be, okay, now we need to continue to try to get players in. So I think they'll wait and kind of see. And it's frustrating from Richmond supporters' point of view, but that's the... and the hard thing is, there's not as that many players that want to move. Like the NBA, it's a bit different because you get 5 main players on court, and you've got a small bench there. So you can go and trade 2 or 3 players. It makes a massive difference to your side.
Oh, for sure.
And, out of the, what have we got, 32 teams, so 160 players who are who your starters, there might be out of there 20, 30, 40 players move. Well, if you can get into 1 or 2 of them, that's a massive difference. AFL, you probably get the same amount of movement, 40 players, but there's 800 players in the list.
Yeah.
And so there's probably only 1 or 2 players you can probably get as a club. The Bombers, obviously into maybe 3 or 4, and there's a couple going out. But that's kind of a big list change for AFL compared to other sports. But for us to be on like this percentage side compared to your Premier League and NBA and even NFL, we'd have to be trading like 10, 15 players, and clubs aren't going to upset their list. Geelong have said that. They don't want to make too many changes this year because they had so many players go in and out last year. So they're like, it sort of unsettles the dynamic.
Oh, you can't just blow up the team synergy like that by having so much turnover on your list, because the grounds that we play on are really big. It's not like a basketball court, which is a really small area. There's not too much space. You just need someone to, you can just teach them on the board, and the tactics are relatively the same. There's a lot of textbook plays in the NBA, and you can help cover for other people. Whereas on a massive field like ours, in our incredible game, our players genuinely are gladiators. Like, what they have to do, they are the most... This is peak physical human capability, I think, in the entire world. It needs to be out there more. But the demand on the players is so much, and you really need to have full buy-in from all the players. Because as soon as one player doesn't do their zone defense properly, you just get completely exposed and you leak goals, and that's been a massive problem at my club for so long, just not everyone having that buy-in and consistently sticking to the game plan. Having so much changeover and turnover in your list disrupts the cohesion of and everyone knowing and understanding where everybody is. It takes a long time for your team defense to structure up. And then as a result, you really have some difficult difficult transitions. I'm hoping that we don't have something similar because we are being quite active, and everyone who's a free agent is really getting involved with, Essendon's interested, or Essendon's sniffing here. I know we got a war chest, but geez, I didn't think we were like performing war crimes. That's how much, how big our war chest is. BZT out, Mackay in. That's an upgrade. I'm really happy with that move. Phillips out to retirement. We bring in Todd Goldstein, number one hit-out ruckman in the history of the competition.
And Draper's out injured next year.
And Draper is injured. I
don't know when he'll come back, but I think they're thinking more worse. Yeah. And there's no rush then.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. We've got Goldie. We bring Goldie across, who's certainly capable of being a number one ruckman, who can push forward and kick a goal, take a mark. He's a very serviceable, help, 2-meter Peter out.
Well, he's a really good coach. So, Clubs have been wanting to get him for that side of things as well. And he's done a really good job. Yeah, he's coached him. I've always said this, it's for teachers and coaches and that. The best way you can rate yourself is by keep coaching or teaching yourself out of a job. Because you coach them so well, they don't need you anymore.
Correct.
And that's what Goldstein has pretty well done at North Melbourne. He's coached Cherry to the point where, Goldstein, you're back to the reserves. We don't need you because you've done... And he has apparently spent a lot of time helping Cherry develop. And that's where Essendon, and Scott obviously knows that, he can come in and do the same thing for Nick Bryan.
Correct.
So, he's a great asset for off the field as much as he is on the field.
That's why I'm really happy about him coming across, and I'm really glad that Goldie didn't decide to want to be a one-club player, which does have a certain allure to a lot of people. There are some players that are just like, nah, stuff it, give me the bag, I want to play wherever my best opportunity is, whether it be financially or in terms of success. But I'm really happy that Goldie, I wouldn't be surprised if part of that deal involves a transition into a coaching sort of role at the club. We're showing that we are happy to pay over the soft cap in order to get more recruitment in terms of development coaches in our list. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Brad Scott's been like, mate, you know me, I love you to bits. Come be a ruckman for us. Draper's injured. Come help develop Nick Bryan, who's young and budding, who signed on an extension for us. I was really happy that Nick Bryan recommitted to the team because I know he was getting a lot of interest from especially the Gold Coast Suns up there. So really happy that he's managed to stick around with us and then move on to a coaching gig afterwards.
Exactly. And I think, if you can get Dersma, that allows either Martin or Durham to even develop it inside if you want to do that. Gives the flexibility to even push them forward. At times, everyone's like I heard, bloody Adam Cooney, he's like, where does Dersma fit in? I'm like, champ, I'll explain it to you. At times this year, Heppel's gone out to the wing. You've had to have other players go play that because players don't play 100% game time.
No.
That just doesn't happen. And the ability to have flexibility through your positions as well. So Dersma, who has the ability to play half-forward flank, but then if Martin and Dersma needs a rest, or maybe Dersma's the one that's starting on the wing, and it's the other guys that are sort of swapping there through with him. But I think that just gives the Bombers an extra avenue to goal and more flexibility with their running capacity on the outside. So
absolutely,
I think that's another good move from them. And as you said, if it only losing sort of BZT to get this, a lot of these are free agents. Like Gresham will come in, half forward flank there. Again, there's another guy who can pinch it through the midfield, so it gives you another option. It's probably
a good size.
Dersma's good side. These players, if they can stay fit, will add. It's just the same problem hasn't been solved as the actual key forward. I look at Peter Rose, the centre half forward, and he's all right.
He's a lead-up player. He's not a crunching packs player.
And Langford, fantastic season. I still think that you really want him as your second forward, and you need that other one gun. And I've been pretty vocal about this with a few saying, well, you've got one, and you should go get the other twin. And if you've got this war chest, I'd be offering the world to get Harry Mackay in, because if the Bombers are saying by bringing all these guys, we're ready now. We've got the list, Merritt, Parrish, and that are all in that sweet spot for their careers. So's Ridley, Redmond. Like, these guys aren't young, but they're not old. But they're that 25, 26. They're getting enough games in. So, and maybe then next year they're thinking, we'll go target one of them there. But I think Harry Mackay is gettable, and you've just got his brother to commit. So why wouldn't you have a crack?
They're the same person, though.
Well, I've always said that.
How can we possibly have this other Carlton dude when we've already got one of them in our team?
So, but credit to the Bombers, they're making moves, and that hopefully for their supporters will see to hold them in good stead, but you'd be sceptical at the same time because we do know, Essendon have done this before and that, and may have not have worked out well for them. We've seen clubs do this, like Port Adelaide have brought a group of players in before. We had that Watts Rockcliffe year. I think they had a couple others who their names escape me, and it didn't do them any good. So it can have the reverse effect. And maybe it can be too many cooks in the kitchen, too many C graders, and you don't actually have the superstars where some of these other teams do. So it'd be interesting to see how they all go and how their bodies hold up, because Mackay, Gresham have had their injury, Bersma, all have had their injury concerns. So if the Bombers medical team, that's probably the
big problem
probably
for
the
us.
thing where you need to spend the most amount of money.
Correct.
Because if you can get them right, great. But if they're spending a lot of time on the sidelines, it could be a long year. And Essendon right now, I've got them anywhere from 4th to 16th.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know how some of these players' bodies will hold up.
It's very hard to get a read on us, and that's been the case for a long time. We are a bit of an enigma side because we do have talent on the list, and I think most of our amazing talent is on the younger side, I think, and it wouldn't hurt getting these mature age players to come in, play a role. They don't necessarily have to star, but as long as they can continue to front up and try and play a game for us every week, it could mean that some of these young talent can go back to the VFL. Our VFL, as you know, has been absolutely atrocious in recent times because we just don't have the depth of talent. We are playing them probably too early in the AFL, in the seniors list. And all of a sudden, these games that we're giving to these youngsters, the meaning and the weight of playing in a senior AFL list sort of loses its weight, loses its meaning, because now everyone and their pet dog can basically come and play for the side because we don't have the depth. So I think it's really important that we can get some of these experienced players who could be in our best 22, allow some of these youngsters, like Elijah Start. There's no reason for Elijah Sardis to have to be flung into the full swing of things, especially coming off an injury to his knee last year. I wouldn't mind having him, develop away in the VFL. That's what Geelong do. It's all about the VFL can be a great spot, a great area for these young players to develop. They don't have to be given AFL games right off the bat. If they can get in, develop, work away, win some games, learn a winning system, and then push these mature guys out, that there is where you start to really have true competition for your list spots. Everyone is fully committed to giving 100% effort to try and maintain their spot in the side. And all of a sudden, bang, here we are, razzle-dazzle, freaking flying into the top 8 and winning a final.
It's underestimated how good that, important that VFL is, because you see the great teams. Hawthorn through their period, Box Hill was flying.
Yep.
Melbourne for a long time, Casey have been a very strong team. Richmond were winning VFL premierships during their run. And now recently we've had the Lions and the Suns very successful in the VFL. Don't know what's got the VFL when the NEFL teams are in it, but they've been very good. So no doubt Brisbane are up there at the moment, and it actually, I think the Suns under Dimmer can show a lot of quick improvement, because not only these gun academy kids that will come in, but their reserves, actually they've got a lot of strong, it's a strong platform for those guys who have been developing. So if they have injuries or push competition for the spots, and that winning culture, as you said, it's got to start somewhere. And at least if it's in the reserves and that, at least the club hopefully can get that vibe and be feeling it, and it'll turn into success. And a lot of the time, it does turn into success for the AFL side. So, they're another one that's an interesting one. They're trying to move their pick 4, get those points, trying to do other things with it, move future points in. So. Brisbane, probably not as active. We've talked about Dode, but they're also mindful that they need points next year, because Levi Ashcroft most likely will choose the Lions and could become... he could be just as good, if not better than his brother.
I was about to say, is it true he could be better than his brother?
He's
What
absolute.
the hell?
Absolute. So, and this is where, Dev Robertson, well done to him, because right now he knows Will Ashcroft's missing.
Yep.
First half of next year. Levi doesn't come in until the year after. So he signs for 2 years. Brisbane are a chance to go for a flag next year. He's going to get first crack, played in the grand final, so he's going to get first crack for next season. Hopefully his form is good enough, even when Will Ashcroft comes back, that he can stay on the side and push somebody else out. maybe wins a flag. After the 2 years, the Lions bring all these guys in, and then he just heads off the West Coast then.
That's it.
And misses the probably the worst that's going to come for West Coast. And I know a few supporters but it is like you've lost some more senior players.
Yep.
And then he can go and still play midfield at that club and get their long-term deal there. So, well done to Dev and his management, because I think that's the smart way to play it.
100%. Speaking of West Coast, mate, there's one guy over there at West Coast I think would be absolutely perfect for us. Now, it's highly unlikely that he would come. I think next to impossible that he'd come. But how amazing would it be if we got Oscar Allen? Like, I'd pay a farm. I'd pay a farm to get Oscar Allen across.
West Coast supporters have been having, even some Adelaide supporters have been having a crack saying, they're not going anywhere. No, they're not tradable. And Chris and I have been discussing this. Every player is tradable in the AFL. Yep. Now, the problem is that player, because of our system, needs to be able to agree to it. If you've got the American system, you can just trade them and say, no, you're getting that contract, but you're off to that place. We don't have that here. But if, hypothetically, let's just say Nick Dacos is the number one player in the comp for the future because of his age and what he's already doing. If North Melbourne were to somehow go, okay, here's our future first to West Coast, and West Coast somehow agreed to it and said, here's pick 1, and they got pick 4 which will become pick 4 from Hawthorn. And they went to Collingwood and said, here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. We want Nick Dacos. Collingwood are doing that trade.
Of course.
Of course they're doing, because they're like, we love you, Nick, but that is legitimately our future. Now, Nick, I'm not saying Nick Dacos would then want to go to North, but Collingwood would be like, how do we get this guy to convince to go?
Correct.
Because Harley Reid we'll take Dersma. This will absolutely change our club for the future. And now saying that, not saying North would do that because it's probably too high of a price to pay, but
probably.
There are some clubs that might go if we really want Oscar Allen or Nick Larkey or somebody like that. And we've seen it with the Swans with trying to get Norton. We need a key forward. What do we need to do? Well, let's offer him $12 million over 10 years. Okay, if it's not him, let's go to the next one. And what do we have to give up? And this is the whole debate we had before. Melbourne, well, if we've got to move Clary on and try to rebuild through there to get that, and then give them a bunch of like Melbourne, who I think have picked 4, 13, something else, their future first. If they win, is it okay? Now West Coast aren't in the position where Clary makes sense, and Clary wouldn't go there. But hypothetically, let's just say West Coast were a little bit further than the ladder. They go, here, you can have Oliver, we'll give you your pick 4, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, but we want Oscar Allen in return. West Coast Kennedy, of course, absolutely. Yeah. How do we make sure? And this is what happened with Judd and Kennedy. Yep. Like, Kennedy didn't want to necessarily go to West Coast. He was, I think, on holidays and hearing the rumours because West Carlton are like, we need to give something up to get Judd.
Yeah.
Now, Kennedy, fantastic, worked out brilliant for West Coast. Premiership player. Superstar full forward.
They won that trade.
Then they had Maston in there. But then Judd also with his one Brown leadership. Now, from a team point of view, definitely West Coast won that trade. But then Judd has also had a massive impact on probably the group and everything that he's done for the Blues. So
beating you boys.
There's two sides to it. But to get a gun, you've got to give. And that's why a lot of these trades, unless they're free agents or you're in a position where you can just be picks, you go for these bit part players because they don't cost you as much. It's really hard to get a player of that caliber, be it Oliver, Allen, any of them, out of another club because you have to offer like Essendon, if you wanted Oliver, you pretty well got to offer Merritt, and people were like, well, we don't want to give up Merritt. Well,
you're getting Oliver.
But you're not getting Oliver if you're not doing that. Like this is the reality. And so people were like, some of it's a bit tongue in cheek, but others going, McAdam and pick 9, and that just doesn't happen. So, no. And it's probably my one frustration with Trade Radio because people ring up or they text or tweet out some of the worst trades back and go, well, there's no club in any way looking at that. So there are plenty, as I said, plenty of other little bit players that have been linked. So
what happens if we give West Coast the Prince of Perth? The Prince of Perth
doesn't matter, mate.
Is Matt Guelphi.
Doesn't matter.
That's his nickname. The Prince of Guelphi.
We're talking about it. So the Essendon, not to continue with that. So we've got Will Snelling potentially gets pushed out.
Go to them.
He's been linked to my boys. That I don't know if that's going to happen. He's probably one of those guys that, at the end, if there's list spots and how that works and stuff, he probably stays because I think off the top of my head he might be having a year contract, but he might be one of these other ones who actually is because Essendon didn't have a lot to re-sign. The Saints, Jack Billings' name's been linked to a couple clubs. I believe Carlton and Essendon are out of that.
Nice.
So I know, again, our boys, there's some talk about that.
I don't want Billings.
The Swans. There's a couple other teams there who, are having a little look there. James Harms there's a link there, not only to Sydney, potentially Gold Coast to that, but the Bulldogs. I've heard about that. I'm trying to think who else at the top. Matt Flynn has now gone over to West Coast as a free agent. So that with them and I think Williams, who came along.
That's
quite
a good
well
move. It's a good move for the Eagles
It's a good
as well.
move for the Eagles. It's not costing them anything.
No.
That's a good move for Flynn because he's going to be behind Briggs. They're going to keep Bruce on. So he started us off as their ruck this year and then fell back because of injury and because of Briggs. So
Briggsy.
I think that's a good move all round there. And again, that doesn't cost West Coast anything. I think that's just a nice, smart decision by them.
Yeah. Because they don't have to rely on BJ anymore.
Exactly.
Mr. BJ Williams.
You've got
Not going to say his nickname.
Paddy Dow is from the Blues. The Saints, there has been a little bit of interest there. I know there's been a bit of talk about the Swans as well. I think that's going to be a harder one because I think St Kilda and then Carlton both rate and value. And some of these players are really hard to value.
Yes.
Zach Fisher again,
North
Melbourne is going to go
yep.
to North, but exactly what is his value? I think the Blues would want to do something with one of those compensation end of first rounds that they've got
Surely
now. That
not first,
well
end of
now,
first.
and when I say that, that'd be something like Carlton gives something back,
Right?
And here's Fisher, But North would be probably thinking, okay, we want to give you a pick, maybe a future second, future third. Dylan Stevens the same. Probably a future second, future third, where again the Swans are probably going to go for that. And a lot of clubs are going to try to get these end of first round compensation picks because I feel like the AFL have said to North, you've got them here to trade, a bit like the Griffin Lowe, Darcy Tucker situation last year, but they're under review. So if you don't trade them, you may not have them next year. So
Correct.
North are probably thinking, well, we
They have
need
to
to
use
move
them.
these
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Where the other clubs are like, well, they're kind of more gettable. Their value isn't as much because you have to use these, even though technically they don't have to. But that's how I think clubs are viewing it. So they might be like, where Dylan Stevens probably is a future second, future third, or Zach Fisher the same. These clubs are like, well, you've got to use these picks. But then North Melbourne are trying to see if they can use them to, get up their other picks in the, because I've got Port Adelaide's pick from last year, part of that Horn Francis deal. So can they package them together, try to get up to Gold Coast pick? Bulldogs are trying to do the same because they've got Croft with the father and son.
Yes.
Can they package?
The Hawks are still trying to go up
Hawks
as
are
well.
trying to get up to pick one. I'm struggling to see if they had straight out 3. It might be, but now it gets pushed back to 4. Like West Coast aren't doing that unless they know they can get Curtin.
Yep.
So,
which I don't think they'll get. If it's pick 4, I don't think Curtin fall.
I think the only way Hawthorn could do that is by trying to trade to North Melbourne to get 2. So could they go? The Hawks go future first and 4 for North Melbourne's pick 2. And then what can they somehow offer to West Coast? Go, well, 2-1. You guys still like Curtin anyway. Can we give you Granger Barras, Brockman, pick 2? But then they've already traded out their future first. So what can they do? Where I think, unfortunately, it's got to be what West Coast would want one of their guns, like Newcomb Day, which Hawthorn aren't doing.
They're not going
for 4-1 because the gap there. You've got to make sure West Coast are still getting Curtin in return.
Yes, correct. And I'm not entirely sure just how high of a draft pick the Hawks' future first is going to be. If we see, because this has been their first season under, Sam Mitchell, and everyone predicted them to have a really bad season. It's been anything but a bad season, I think, for Hawks. Yes, they've been let down a couple of games here and there. They're very young and inexperienced. They culled a lot of the senior list, but their season was actually an overwhelming success, I think.
Look who they beat. They beat Collingwood, premiers.
Yep.
Beat Brisbane, runners up.
Yep.
Came within
Smashport.
Yep. Over there. Beat the Dogs. They came within a whisker of beating Richmond, whisker of beating GWS. I think they only just lost to Adelaide as well. I think that was 2 points.
Yeah, very close.
So all the teams that like are around the mark there, they could have easily had 10 wins.
Exactly.
Beat St Kilda, another finalist. So their form stacked up against all the really good teams.
Exactly. They've been insane.
And it was early in the year where that's when, unfortunately, they had to play the Bombers, and they got smashed by them. And it's probably some of the teams that lower. Then they get a bit tired at the end of the season, and Fremantle get a hold of them. But another pre-season into these guys, if they can bring, I don't know if Chol's exactly the answer, but it's 4 years plus triggered for another one, so they're hoping he can be a 40, 50 goal.
They must really dislike Kosicki, because I thought Kosy,
I kind of like
was pretty
him.
good.
Yeah, but pretty well from mid-year they've gone, Kosy isn't the guy. Our resident Hawk, Daz, could probably tell us a little bit about that.
He loves it. He's gone.
But Hawthorn are trying to make moves to try to improve, and they could be one that might be the surprise package for next year. There's always a team from that bottom six that's the surprise package.
Yep.
So you could see Hawthorn being that. I think Raz is going there about Fisher and Stevens saying probably in the pick in the 40s. Yeah, that's why I say sort of future. If you think future second, that's probably by the time picks get bumped out and that it gets close to that sort of 35-40, which is probably their value. But it's not going to stop Carlton and Sydney asking for that future first. And that's where it thinks if North Melbourne can't do a deal for Gold Coast, then these clubs go, Carlton, for example, we'll give you a future second back, but we want your future first because you're going to lose it, or here's our second pick this year and there's, I think, though, a couple of those trades, as much as they could get done early, which if the clubs have got more to do, they'll try to get them over and done with Monday. Well, Monday open, so Tuesday, Wednesday, so they can move on to other stuff. But I could definitely see them being those ones. We get to that deadline and they're all in the room together, and it's like, Zach Fisher just done, Dylan Stevens just done, because the clubs, I feel like, are a little bit further apart on where each club values and they're hard players to value, because Paddy Dow and Dylan Stevens were, pick 3 and a pick 5 originally when they were drafted. So it's no different to the Liam Henry.
Yes.
So Caulfield's going St Kilda to the Bulldogs.
That's a big loss, I think, for St Kilda.
If his body is right, he's a really good player.
He's a very good player.
192 centimetre, plays a bit taller, but he can rebound. He was awesome in that finals year a couple of years ago, but his body's just let him down. A pick 5, something like that. It was top 10 at
top
least.
10 pick,
top 10. Where you've got Liam Henry, who was pick 8, pick 9, but 2 years younger. St Kilda think they're worth the same. Mm-hmm. The difference is, like Caulfield, they were only offering him another year to kind of get the body right. Might have been a trigger for a second. Henry, Fremantle don't really want to lose. So I don't think St Kilda are going to get exactly what they want there. And that's another one which I think the Caulfield one gets done quick, but the Henry one's going to drag out quite throughout trade. And this is where it gets frustrating as fans, because you'd rather the clubs try to spend like this weekend trying to nut these down, so then your club can move on and do other stuff. If you're losing a player, okay, well, who else can we get to bring in?
Correct.
But then some of the other clubs, they do these stalling tactics as a tactic so that other clubs don't get better. Like St Kilda are going to, for example, Fremantle lose Henry. Fremantle, they don't want coming up and having time to find a player to replace him, because that means Fremantle are going to be competitive with St Kilda. So if St Kilda can stall this out as well, and then even if they cave in at the end, fine, well, Fremantle haven't replaced him, and we can get a leg up for next season. And this does happen as well.
Well, St Kilda's got their hands full trying to work out with us what the hell they're thinking of doing with this Gresham and Shields situation as well. Like, now with the news that Dylan Shields gone off and got surgery on his knee, it's like, well, that calls into question what is his worth in terms of the kickback that they're going to send our way, because now from what it was really reported very early on that things were in full swing and we were kicking back and forwards and trying to come up with this crazy, shifty, exploitative deal of the compensation system. But now that this surgery has gone, things have really cooled down a lot, I think, on that front. Do you still see them doing that? Because I'm pretty sure Gresham is going to nominate.
And this is where it gets interesting, because the Bombers, it sounded like they were committed to a large salary there to Gresham to help this happen.
Yeah.
So do the Bombers now go, no, we're not actually offering as much? Now, I don't think St Kilda still match. But then if they don't do that, because I think Shield, because of the sort of back-ended contract, the Bombers were happy to see him kind of leave because it would free up to maybe do some other moves and some of these moves that they're trying to do, and maybe even try to front end, if they aren't getting the forward this year, maybe front end a couple other contracts, again, leave cap to try to go after somebody next year. But then I guess if Shield, and they know Shield's cooked with his knee. So some Bombers supporters are like, no, if we can get him right. And it's like, well, I'd rather another club take that risk.
Correct.
But then St Kilda, again, it's like, well, we're not going to give you a first back. We might even not give you a second back kind of.
Unless they knew about it beforehand.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah.
But would you give up a pick 13
No.
for a Dylan Shield if you knew that he has a dodgy knee?
No,
you probably
it's not
wouldn't.
happening.
No way. Like St Kilda are not that. They're not. I know Sauce, their list manager, was really into Dylan Shield, but surely he's not that much into Dylan Shield.
So that comes into it as well. So I think that one will be another one that gets dragged out. Elliot Himmelberg from Adelaide to GWS. I think that's going to be a struggle now because Chol isn't going to Adelaide. Correct. And Adelaide are also losing Shane McAdam.
Yes.
So that's two. That's the. Chol was going to be the perfect replacement because they're going to get Burgess from Gold Coast, but he's going to feel a need down back now that they're losing Dode. And that's part of Adelaide because they're pretty firm on the fact that they don't offer these long contracts like some of the other clubs do. So Dode, who was wanting this, I think, 6 years, 500 or
Rankin
whatever it
says
was.
hello, though.
Yeah, but to get players in sometimes it's different. They don't usually overpay the players they have in there.
Right.
It's just something that they've sort of always done. Which rightly or wrongly, and this is the whole argument about Norton. Like, he Cancun's, he hates these long contracts.
Well, I agree with him though.
I agree to a point, but at the same time, it's no different to buying a house, where you can keep offering $1 million for a house, but if somebody wants to keep offering 1.2, 1.3, well, you're never getting a house.
But you know that house is going to keep standing up unless there's an earthquake, right? But that house is going to keep standing up. It's not like a player who. Especially a high flyer like Norton, who's always banged up.
His body is banged up.
You don't know. This house is not going to go for a screamer one day and then wake you up in the middle of the night. Oh, crap, the foundation's broken. Like, it's a safe investment because it's safe as houses, right? There's literally a saying around that. Whereas with players, humans are so fragile.
But let's hypothetically, the Bulldogs don't do that and he goes to Sydney. Then next year, Freo or West Coast come out and offer Tim English 8 to 10 years, which they could do. So he goes. And then another club comes and goes to Jamara. Well, Norton's getting 10. Well, 8 years, we'll offer you 10 as well. And all of a sudden, because the Bulldogs are going, well, we're only going to give 3 or 4 years, which they're in their right to do.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, all their good players leave because other clubs... Now, that might put those other clubs in more trouble if things goes wrong. But there's other clubs out there who are like, we'll offer it. Why not?
But they get compensated for that, though. They get compensated for that.
But then that just puts them back where they might be trying to contend right now. Yeah, okay, they get compensated.
They're not going to win a flag with Bevo as their coach.
We always talk about that. But at the same time, it's the fact that then they've got to go back to the drawing board and then because of that, then does McRae and Bailey Smith walk out because they're like, well, we can't win a flag now.
It might not be the worst idea.
It might not be.
Well, they're playing McRae on a wing.
Well, that too. I think... Does McRae maybe now get that little bit more midfield time this year, keep him happy? But this is the hard thing. Bailey Smith probably wants.
They try to keep Dunkley happy.
Well, that's
after
right.
they have, and we saw how that played out.
It's a massive year for the Dogs. But now that Norton's actually committed, it gives me a little bit more confidence in what they're doing. But they had to offer that, otherwise, that they might see this walkout.
Yeah.
And sort of where does that leave their club? So
that's a potential problem in the future.
It goes both ways.
Yeah. Whereas we got Globes here. If Tex drops off a cliff, what then for the Crows? Because they're forward stocks. I mean, you still got Fogarty,
right?
And
he's got a point there because like Butts is injured, so they've got Nick Murray playing the back line. So Burgess comes in to help that.
Yeah.
But they've got Tex, Thilthorpe, Fogarty. So I think they're not too bad. But I think it's like they want Himmelberg there in case.
Yes.
Break glass. But
correct.
There was some talk that there could be a deal between Himmelberg and Nick Haynes.
Okay.
Now, we know Haynes is going to be GWS's highest paid player next year just because they back-ended, and he's entitled to that money. GWS are happy to let him go and happy to pay 40 to 50% of his salary.
Yep.
Adelaide, I think, are more in that 60, 70% range. So if they could come with a deal and say, okay, this is the only way you're getting Himmelberg, we'll take Nick Haynes, you're paying 60% of his salary. Giants might end up getting and reunite the brothers. Yep. Adelaide are happy because they've got Nick Haynes there, which at least strengthens their back line, gives them the coverage that they need. So I can see that happening, and potentially that could still go ahead if both clubs can come to terms like that.
I wouldn't mind taking all of Nick Haynes' salary. I think he's a very serviceable player. You can be good depth, get him across. What happens if you have an injury in the back line? All of a sudden things get a little bit dicey. But, yeah, I mean, Adelaide, I'm not sure what that would mean for Adelaide's forward line, though.
Well, yeah, but as we said, they've actually got 3 options still up there. It's not like it's...
I guess.
And Himmelberg's, I think, that swingman sort of cover both kind of ends. But they've still got a couple options.
They need a lot from Thilthorpe, I think. See, I think Fogarty. I think Fogarty's taken another step in his career. I think Fogarty's shown that he's that guy that everyone hoped that he would be. Obviously, Tex, as the Global and Lukey have been talking about that. Yeah, Tex is a gun, especially at that age. What a superstar of the comp. It's Riley. Thilthorpe has to take that next step. Too often he gets beaten in one-on-one contests. He's a big boy. He needs to play like a big boy.
He's had one moment where he kicked that winner against the Saints, and we
Kick
love
it over
him for
his
it.
head.
But that is it.
You can't be a one-hit wonder, mate.
No.
Ask David Zaharakis all about that.
So we got so Jono, g'day mate. How are you? Ryan, darling for Oliver. Yeah, love it, mate. We got got Globes agree. Let's we'll have to do something. Catch up with beverages, have an open thing, or whatever.
No Pepsi Maxes.
Yeah, that's right. Which you've made some good points. Cadman, I think, will get re-signed through. They'll do that in the off season. So I think that's where GWS will move there. Cozzy to the Dons, I don't see that happening.
You think at Kozitsky, I think he's talking about. Like, if
we
could get Kozitsky, that would have been great. I think a great fit, but it's not going to happen.
He's going to Richmond, and that is but I think, again, they're a bit worlds apart of what his value actually is. Luke's asked about Ridley and Supercoach next year. Definitely something to be high on the radar. I was high on him this year. If he keeps his body right, and then Ben Mackay's got to keep his body right. Correct. But definitely Mackay's an upgrade to what they've got. Again, I think the one that gets underestimated here is Redmond.
Red Dog.
Yeah, where it probably even makes me lean more towards him. That's the only hard thing because the Bombers are kind of switch and swap. So it's one to watch in pre-season. What sort of role does Ridley and Redders play? But Red Dog might actually be the better option.
Yeah, but BCT kept getting beat one-on-one.
Yeah.
And whenever that was a problem, we'd always switch and have Ridley play that defensive role. There's no doubt about it. As long as Mackay is healthy, he is without a doubt a much better
100%
BCT. And they won't have to do that shuffling around, and Ridley can continue to be that intercepting player. It all just comes down to whether or not Mackay can stay healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Who we got? Jen, I hope you're going well. Basketball's going well for you. We've got Ultimate Greatness. Pies are certainly interested from what I've heard, and GWS are likely to add a pick for a salary dump. And I'm...
Is this in relation to the Haynes situation?
Well, that could, I think the Haynes situation, that. But I think the problem is now the Crows, because it's the only way Himmelberg's getting done. So, and it could end up being that little bit of a bidding war too. What suits, just in there going about a salary dump and giving up a pick. Well, that might not be as good, handy where if they can just get Adelaide happy to pay his salary to go to Adelaide for the year, and they get Himmelberg back, they're probably more likely to want to do that. Global McGrath should be traded.
Globes, we're not trading our Andy McGrath, our vice captain.
I don't mind it, actually.
Mate, he's been great since moving to halfback. He's got pace, he's got legs, and if you guys recall, we've lost Sard and we lost McKenna, right? So we've lost a lot of dash off halfback. I think you need to have 2 players off halfback that can be dynamic, and you've got Kitty Coleman and obviously Connor McKenna for Brisbane. They were a great duo for him in the back line. Collingwood obviously have a lot of bounce off halfback as well. You need to be able to launch some scores from your back half, and having speed to get the ball out of there is really important, and that's what Andy McGrath's got.
So if I'm Essendon, I'm thinking McGrath's got actually value. I'd trade him and go out and get John Noble, who got left out of that Collingwood side.
McGrath for Noble? No,
I'm not doing that as a straight swap. I'm trading McGrath and getting the value that's in him, because clubs will obviously pay more for him, and I think you could get Noble for the cheap. And I don't think the output that between the two is that huge of a deal compared to what you would have to give up for Noble to what you'd get back from McGrath.
That's fair. That's very fair. But I think what you get from McGrath is leadership, though.
Yeah, you do. But
he's a future captain of the club.
At the same time, as some of these guys that you're kind of bringing in, can they offset any of the leadership that's...
Mackay's not a leader, I don't think.
Goldie's
a leader,
Goldie
yeah, of course.
Is.
But he'll be transitioning to coaching soon, though.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Gresham and his off-field and stuff like that. But obviously, you are bringing in guys. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Like, do you let? Yeah, we've talked about Nick Hind before, and that are you better off Nick Hind and a John Noble with a higher pick coming in, or just going with McGrath? And the same, and there'd be Bomber supporters would be going, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. And there's other Bomber supporters would be like, no, you can't. And it's a good debate to have.
It is. How old is Noble?
His mature age pickup, wasn't he? So, yeah, I'm sure you can find that out because he came from the mid-season draft. His old man is obviously a legend off field for everything he does. Global sale like Hindy. Yeah, that's what Jennifer saying. Noble would never leave. Well, you get left out of a grand final. Markov comes in, and the Pies might be only getting stronger there. I could actually see that. So
only 1 year apart between McGrath and Noble.
That's right. So these are the things that clubs would be thinking about. Going, here's a guy that got left out of the grand final. If you're going to get him potentially now, and Collingwood was probably. You don't want to see them go, but this is what's happening to Melbourne. Their depth is getting, targeted. Collingwood, their players who are on the fringe are going to get targeted. It happens. So Richmond went through it. We had, Brandon Ellis, Chol, those sort of guys get pushed out. Butler, Higgins.
Yes.
Because this is what happens when you win a premiership. Those players are going to get paid more that have been part of that flag. It's just, footy science, really. So that's what happens.
Footy science. You got it. You heard it here from the footy scientist, Dave Swiz himself. I think we've caught up on all of the comments, guys. So thank you all so much for watching. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always. Swiz, mate.
That's good, mate. Well, hopefully back next Friday, and we'll have some trades done that we can actually analyse and then look at the speculation with the last few days of trade week.
There you go, guys. You heard it here first.
Lastly, thanks to our producer, Dave, as always. Thanks for the crowd that's come out today. We've got some, especially from Argentina.
Argentinian crowd.
Appreciate it.
You guys can't see. There is a live audience.
We do have a live audience in the studio. It's amazing.
I make it sound like it's a lot bigger. It's hard to see him. Hard to see him in the back there. Oh, there you go. You can hear him.
Thank you.
All right, put up the sign. Stop applause. Thank you, guys. Like, share, subscribe, all that wonderful goodness, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.